Good morning, everybody. Texas Homer here, Ian Boyd. It's the Wednesday after the season has ended. So today we're going to talk a little bit more globally, but what it takes to win it all now, I guess probably schematically and off the field, right? Off the field is going to matter a lot too. Impressions for the first 12-team CFP. And me and Paul kind of touched on the matchup yesterday, but Ian also dropped an article like right after or right before on Ohio State versus Texas that goes a little more in depth than we did. So we can also discuss that as well, Ian. But let us begin. Elio, good morning. Roaster, good morning. AR, is it August 30th yet? Yeah, we got speculation season. Ian, you ready?
Hey, Connor.
Yeah.
Is it good for the sport that people are starting to recognize championships, modern championships, as potentially being a factor of whether or not you have a billionaire that wants to
fund your team? Yeah. I read there was a YouTube think piece video on it that I saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's like it's do you have the benefactors now? The college football oligarch sounds very important now. So yeah, it's probably not good, but right. I don't know how you stop it without legislation.
I don't know if it's new. It's just more in your face. Because like normally, like if you're an Oklahoma fan, you are like, this team is the pride of Oklahoma. It's like the mascot of our people. We don't have a pro team. This is our forward-facing image that we present to the rest of the world, right? Yep. This shows that Oklahomans are tough and excel and whatever. And now it's like, this is a factor of how much money Tim Headington is willing to spend.
Yeah.
You know, and that it kind of disturbs the image a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we're not getting into politics, but it's just like, this is kind of a thing, you know? So it's just like, yeah, the rich guy, I mean, T. Boone Pickens, right? There's the rich guy's going to support his team, but now it's just much more out there with like Oregon's benefactor at Nike. Who helped out Michigan? Was it Ellison, the Oracle guy? So like, yeah, I think you always had this. We always had the quote unquote boosters, but now it's like, I guess they're like kind of being more open about it.
And then the Ohio State guy is like Jeffrey Epstein's former top partner. Yeah. It's true. I looked it up.
No, it is true. It is true.
True. Like,
we're not going down that rabbit hole, but that is a fact.
You don't even have to say anything. It's like you look into it, and it's like, yeah, this dude was knee deep in Epstein.
Yeah.
And he's the benefactor of Ohio State. Now, and then there's Phil Knight. Obviously, I don't know if you said him.
Yeah.
These guys have always been important. Like, they would fund the facilities. They would sometimes fund the coaching salaries. And then, like, it was really more your small-time boosters, like still wealthy people, but your smaller-time boosters that would pay the players. Mm-hmm. But then with NIL, the salaries for the players, like, just went crazy. Yeah. And so then everybody started going to those billionaires and being like, hey, instead of the new football field for $20 million, for $50 million, how about you and your buds give us to that over 3 years to build our roster? And of course, now we're going to have TV revenue anyway, so maybe that should probably help with this.
Yeah, how do you solve it? And so you legislate, I guess, you set a salary cap, the schools then now have to pay staff and players, and then the rich guys just buy buildings, continue to buy the buildings. Like, what do you do?
You can't set a salary cap because they'll still be able to profit off name, image, and likeness, and you can still play whatever games you want there. But I think a lot of billionaires will be like, look, if you're getting $20 million a year from your TV deal, you don't need it. I don't want to spend it on the players.
So I think
a lot of these billionaires have been doing this from this is a short-term deal, not like I'm good for $20 million a year so that we're good at football.
Well, because there's no true ROI. They're doing this almost just because they like the team, right? You're not turning a profit on this.
Yeah.
You know?
Now there could be ROI in the future if there's capital investment that funds college football's continued evolution.
That's true.
And that's going to happen for sure. Did you read that? There's a hilarious article that Deion Sanders sent one of assistant coaches to like Dubai or Saudi Arabia to try to convince oil money to invest in the Colorado roster.
Well, who was that?
It's a visionary, Deion.
Wasn't the Big 12 open to that too? Or was it the ACC or was it Florida State? Or there was also someone that was talking about taking foreign investment to build these leagues.
Yeah, that's likely.
Yeah.
That's part of everybody that wants like a Premier League model for college football. Guess what? Guess what that means?
Yeah.
You can look at who owns some of the big teams in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Also, you can get something like some billionaire sheik decides that the equivalent of Manchester City should become the new power of the league. So like some sheik, they could just be like, I'm going to invest in Michigan because that's an obvious return on investment. But some guy could also be like, I'm going to go and buy Vanderbilt, or I'm going to, or UAB.
And they just rise to prominence.
I'm just going to turn them into a freaking juggernaut.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's the return on investment part that's going to be super tricky. Because it's like, even so, say you do build the league, the schools are still going to control all the gate at the stadium that is on their premises. You're just buying what? The IP, the ability to sell the shirts. What are you actually buying there?
Cut of the TV revenue.
Okay.
I invest in you to do this. You pay me back from your TV revenue, from your gate. I mean, you just charge a interest. But
are the schools involved in this aspect?
Yeah, they'll just be buying up. I saw a video where this equity or venture capitalist guy was explaining that corporations are going to want to buy into universities and their football programs and invest in it for the return. Especially if it's, I mean, like, what if the Longhorns, this is what Aggies will love this because they're convinced that Tito's vodka pays for all Texas players. What if the Longhorns started wearing a Tito's vodka patch?
So very soccery.
Yeah. I mean, is that crazy?
No, it's not crazy. We're going into, I mean, the amateurism has been a joke. It's not real. We've had this like legal fiction for years, but it's also like scary, the thought of it. People get mad when the logos are on the field. I don't get mad about that. Do you get mad about the logos on the field? Like Walmart for Arkansas or whatever?
I like that one because I feel like it's fitting. And Walmart should be owning their terrible record for their refusal to invest more.
But that's also like a hyper local company that made it big. So there's still like some locality in it that I appreciate.
I don't like it at like if I see it in like the Cotton Bowl, it annoys me. If I were to see something like that in Notre Dame, I'd be like, hey, this was this like pristine thing. Can you just not try to squeeze money out of everything? Arkansas's field, I'm fine with it. DKR, probably honestly would be fine with it. I don't feel like DKR is a
sacred ground.
Not sacred ground.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting. So what I think too is like, so college football is going to have to break away because it can't be involved in any Title IX stuff because that federal stuff is going to hold you back from displaying your revenues. So you're going to have to break off into separating your revenues. You have to give X amount to this program, to this program, to this program.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So it's like you would have to break away entirely and make college football its own thing. And I don't even know how that works in the school context anymore. Is it like totally divorced from being actually University of Texas? You create some legal entity that is still the University of Texas, but it's not the University of Texas. Like, how does that even work? Because you're gonna have to break away for any of this to happen.
They're working on this. I know Eric is doing a series at Inside Texas, where Eric has talked to some top men, as they say in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's not just literally a dude in a warehouse. So there are people like maybe this won't excite anyone, but Ted Cruz is a major player in shaping this future. Some of the other senators, I think, have no idea how any of this works.
Yeah.
Which, that makes sense. A lot of senators don't know how anything works.
Do the schools like the idea of foreign investment, or are they going to guard it ferociously to keep all revenues to themselves? Like, what do you know how they feel about it?
I mean, just like the structure of the sport in general.
Right.
I don't know. Well, why not? If you get a good interest rate and you feel like it's going to pay, then why not? That's great, right?
I wonder if you can grow the sport that way internationally, if you're taking international money.
I think the trick of all this is it's going to become like why do we have a professional football league that's not the NFL that exclusively features 18 to 22-year-olds? Like, what's the point?
Well, yeah, if you built this system from scratch, none of it makes sense. But we have to take we're at where we're at. Are you saying what, just become all the NFL at that point?
I don't know. It won't do that because it's tied to these universities and communities in a different way. So it's not actually literally tied to specific billionaires in the same way that it is in the NFL. I don't know. I mean, you're right. It's like this thing blew up and got popular, and its infrastructure is not designed for what it's become, much like many of the roadways in Austin.
Yeah, it's still a lot of fun. AR, very curious to see what schools that are known superpowers, blue buds, will not be able to keep up with this new NIL era.
Well, the TV revenue thing could be a game changer there. So, like, if you have a school every school that's in the Big Ten or the SEC is going to get a big chunk of cash. And if they want to spend it on football, they can. And generally how that goes is the Big Ten schools do the minimal amount unless they're like Ohio State or Penn State or maybe Michigan or maybe Michigan State. And the SEC schools will max out every drop that they can to be good at football. So yeah. I don't know how much it's really going to shake up. I think realignment is a bigger factor here because I don't know that much has changed for Oklahoma, except that two things have changed. One is that they don't get to beat up on a little league conference anymore before they go to the playoffs, like Nebraska. And then secondly, Oklahoma used to have this recruiting strategy that was like, we're going to be a big dog in Dallas. We're going to get anybody in Oklahoma that we want. And then we're going to be like second, third, fourth dog to the bowl in Houston, East Texas, whatever. And then we're also going to go into areas that don't have a big regional power. And and our wallet is going to go a lot further there. So like the Central Valley in California, DC, and that like Baltimore, DC area. What's the name of that? What do we call that?
DMV.
DMV, yeah. St. Louis, and then they'd be like Arizona, right? You look at like Riley and Stoops' big recruiting classes, and they were always big players in these areas where it's like there's not a big dog. But then when NIL made everything above board and everybody started paying players more, all of a sudden you got like Missouri is chasing Oklahoma out of St. Louis for big players that they wanted.
Yeah.
And like everybody is poaching in Arizona and everybody's poaching in California. And they still recruit okay, but anyway, those are bigger factors, I think, than.
Do you think the schools that are in the states with the best tax policies actually end up rising if we're talking foreign investment?
Why? How? Explain how that would work.
If you're getting better tax rates, you're not getting taxed as much. I'd want to invest in Texas versus California if I'm a Saudi investor,
Why?
because you're not getting taxed as much on your return.
They get taxed on that?
Yeah, you're gonna get taxed on your income and your money coming back to you.
It could be. Of course, if you own anything in Texas, then you're going to pay the property tax rate, which is
Yeah, but I don't know how much they're gonna like truly own facilities. It seems like you said like they're gonna own more of the idea, the more the brand is what they're gonna own.
I don't know. Maybe.
It'd be interesting to see if there's like a rise there based on where you're based. Same reason why any company like Texas is getting a lot of companies right now.
There's also like sports washing, though, where some of these big Middle Eastern oil players like to fund and sponsor big sporting events, potentially at a loss, because it helps sell their image.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps modernize a little bit. It helps attract foreign investment from Europe and America.
Yeah, and it's like maybe don't look at who we obtained and what they were paid to build these stadiums or things like that.
Right. But yeah, it's a way to improve image, right? When you have policies that the West doesn't necessarily agree with. So yeah, and that's a great investor to have, right? One that's willing to take these like weird losses and just give you the money. It's hard to turn that down. All right. Well, that was a fun talk. I hope you guys enjoyed the future implications of college football. We'll have to see, but these are the real conversations that have to be had because we're going pro with it.
We're barely qualified to talk about it, if at all.
Yeah, barely. Yeah, we are sports writers and content creators. You can see our limitations of our business knowledge right there. But all right, so one of the topics you want to talk about is what it takes to win it all. Is this more of a schematic approach or roster building behind the scenes?
Let's do both.
Okay,
we got an hour.
Yeah, we got time to kill. All right, so let's talk Michigan. Let's talk the past 2 years. Michigan and Ohio State. What do you notice about them from a GM point of view on why they're able to get it done?
So surely other people are talking about this and fleshed it out. But one obvious dynamic for Michigan and Ohio State was they both returned a lot of older players that were fringe NFL guys.
Yep.
I think it's like the fourth round and beyond, it becomes reasonable to pay a guy an NIL figure that will be maybe a little better or more of a sure thing than what he would get on the rookie contract. Plus, you have the potential to improve your stock and go higher than that. So anyway, Ohio State's defensive line this year was like all dudes that could have gone out the year before. And they basically paid them all to come back.
It was Jahdae Barron, but at scale.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Texas, this is true for Texas too. Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, those guys probably could have gone late if they'd wanted to try. Jahdae Barron for sure.
Makuba,
maybe. I want to say there was a Texas offensive lineman, but maybe not. Maybe Jake Majors, but that would have been pretty iffy. Anyway, these teams had just old veteran teams, which makes a huge difference in like a number of ways. One is that I think it's really hard for a young team to navigate the extended season. Like knowing how to take care of yourself, knowing how to play injured, knowing how to build your body in the off season to withstand the grind are all like veteran tricks.
Slowing pace, even offensively and stuff like that, like moving, calling less plays to play longer. That was one of Ohio State's stated goals on why their offense slowed down this year.
Yeah, well, I guess that'd be more of a schematic thing. But just like having an older roster is obviously better for winning lots of high leverage games. It's like the common thing in sports. Like you'll see I saw this NBA stat once that was like players peak statistically at age like 24. But when the guys win in their like late 20s and early 30s, because the decline in athleticism
gets met with their knowledge
is superseded by improved knowledge of how to win and grind out wins. So that was a big thing. Like it used to be, older teams always have some advantage, but it used to be like a young team full of like future NFL guys that could just peak at the right time. You could just shred with that. And now I don't know if that's true anymore.
Well, because now you're facing guys that have a ton of NFL guys and they're experienced. It used to be if you had a ton of NFL guys, they 3-and-outed. So you didn't get a chance for experience. But now you're getting this weird mix of like an NFL talented team with 10 draft picks and they're older.
Yeah.
It's a double dose right now. Ryan Nelson says experience matters much more now than the rosters, now that the rosters are much closer. It didn't matter back in mid-2010s when Alabama had the clear number one roster every year. I think at the top of the sport, it's clearly leveling out a little bit. There's not a ton of difference in NFL talent at the top of the sport right now. Do you agree with that or not?
I'm not sure about that, but you have to play. Maybe with Alabama because they were such a unique deal.
Yeah.
Like they were stacking talent in a way that was just crazy. But even Alabama in that run would lose when they would play other top teams. But now you have to play more top teams to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't just get a one-off or maybe a semifinal and a final. You have to beat what would Texas have had to beat?
Clemson, Arizona State, Ohio State, and Notre Dame.
You got to win 3 or 4 games against top 15 teams. So
which is back to back to back to back, which is crazy. If you play in a conference championship, we're talking about. Well, if you're a conference champion that doesn't get the bye, you might have to go 5 straight games of elite teams, which is actually kind of crazy when you think about it. That's pretty strange. Before we get back to it, guys, let's hear a word from David McClellan.
I'm just going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor. And I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach. And he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
Thank you, LC. It's crazy that we have to literally get him on the live, do his ad read, and then he has to leave. It's really helpful. All right, so we know off the field. So the plan is this. Your early rounders are going to go no matter what, essentially, right? If you're first and second, they're going to be gone. But anyone kind of 3 through 7th, you have a pitch. And so you get them to stay. If you have a bunch of 4th and 5th round guys, that's great. Get them to come back. You pay them the money. The number that constantly gets thrown around is somewhere between 20 and 25 million, right? I can't verify any of that. That might just be all message board. Yeah, for roster retention. That might be all message board speculation, but I always hear somewhere in that range of 20 to like 25 for Ohio State, for Texas, for everybody.
For just the whole, that's for like the whole roster.
Correct. It's not just you're not just bringing back your top guys with that. That's your total spend. It would be interesting to get a ballpark for like how much you're paying specifically those guys to come back. I don't know. So they do come back. How does it alter? What does it take to win it all now on the field? Now that you've got the chess pieces, what do you have to do now?
What's interesting is defense has taken more of a front seat again. I feel like evolutions in defense have caught up to offense in a lot of ways. Like you're seeing in the NFL, it's very
ton of frustration on offense.
it's very clear in the NFL, like you can't just spread teams out and throw the ball around anymore. They'll play too deep. They'll encourage you to run and where you'll be less efficient. And then some of the best teams are actually the teams that can like get under center and pound the ball because there's so many diminishing returns. And the defenses will, it used to be like defenses will load the box, right? And now defenses do not do that. They're happy to let you try to drive the field. They finally figured that out. Unless you're a team that's like maybe like the Ravens with Lamar Jackson or some team that has like this huge plus advantage in the box. The same thing is happening with college football to some extent. Michigan just won with like an old school power run offense. Ohio State and Notre Dame both got there by running their quarterback a fair bit.
In the championship, yeah.
Like, well, even against Texas, like where would Ohio State be if Will Howard couldn't be a short yardage Ellinger light?
That one backbreaker run where we didn't fit it right, but yeah, you're right.
Yep. And even a couple scrambles, makes a difference. So I don't know the defense. I don't know if Steve Sarkisian's 2020 Alabama may have been the last team that just.
I was going to say, because my argument went from defense wins championships to no, it doesn't, you fools. It's all about firepower to back to defense wins championships. Because they've figured out how to take away RPOs. They figured out how to play split field coverage and keep two safeties high while not stacking the box. And you've seen it. Like, the game has become much more check down centric and screen centric and short gamey. So I think that's a big part.
It may be also that you need maybe the most important checklist item is, can you run consistently, or can you run when it matters most on a nickel defense? Like Texas could not run when it really mattered on a good nickel defense this year.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the tight end or the running quarterback to give them a numbers advantage. And they so much of the playbook would just go out the window if the other team was big and strong enough on the edge.
Because you could play pass personnel that could also play the run game. Now you got best of both worlds.
Yep.
Do you think that's even solvable though for us? Because we still tend to go with the 6'7" tight ends that are receivers, and Arch can run, but Sarkisian is not going to call a ton of design stuff there or encourage a lot of freelancing in that regard. So it's like, is that even
maybe he does. Maybe he runs Arch a lot more than we thought. Especially he can probably save it for the big games too. Because it's not like Texas. It's not like this was a problem for Texas every Saturday. They had games where they ran for, 300, 400 yards, something crazy. If you couldn't handle the scheme, then they would just run you over.
And Sark literally created a package with Arch that was totally run focused. So he seems more open to it when the circumstances have kind of forced his hand. I think I'm going off the early Sark interviews where he's like, we're not a quarterback run team. We're not. Maybe the circumstances have lightened his opinion on that.
He did run Casey some. It's obviously you're going to want to do that. I wonder also, if you're the Mannings and you're looking at how things are going in the NFL, then you may see Arch running the ball as actually
value added,
something that you should encourage and do. He did it a ton in high school. He's also, he's a tank. He may be
also the Mannings were very pro pocket passers in the second generation because they didn't have a choice. Peyton and Eli can't run. So, of course, they're going to be anti-quarterback run at that generation. Of course, their dad was incredible and could pretty much invented scrambling at that level. But, yeah, maybe they just don't want him getting hit a bunch. They just know that because they're looking for him. They're looking for Arch to be a household name in 15 years. Yeah. And so they're thinking super long-term here. So they want as least impact on him as possible. And even when he made that run, I guess, versus UTSA or whatever, and they were interviewing him after, they were like, "What did your granddad think?" Because that was the Archie type run. He said, "Don't do that." So it's like, I do want to see kind of how you balance Arch being a special athlete for the quarterback at that size and able to move. Sark not loving to call quarterback run. The Mannings not loving the concept of Sark or Arch running a lot. That's going to be a delicate kind of balance there. I think that's going to be interesting.
But like the household names right now are like Patrick Mahomes, who runs
when needed.
Josh Allen, who runs quite a bit, really.
Yeah.
Those are those are the two best quarterbacks in the league, probably, right?
Yeah.
More to come, probably. It was such a game changer that high schools started putting their best athletes at quarterback in the spread, and that's just we're still seeing like downstream effects of that.
Yeah, but they put their quarterback at spread need to be a safety in college. It's like that stuff was funny too when you see like guys that at the second level weren't that athletic. Let's see. The best offense in CFB this year was not very high level. QB play was very lackluster this year. The best offense, Miami. Who's the best offense, Ryan?
Yeah, for real.
Because you can argue about it. And I never know if the best offense is yards or how we pick it.
The FBI number one offense was it's loading. I think it might have been Ohio State.
Yeah, but I never know whenever a chatter's commenting what they're pulling from there. Like what the best offense is.
Ohio State was a pretty effective offense because even though they had some weaknesses, it's very hard to totally shut them down just because they had weapons everywhere. Like they even ran the ball decently on Texas. They didn't really. It's hard to say they ran the ball well enough to win. I guess depends on how you look at that. But they did score 2 touchdowns in the red zone by running the ball on Texas.
Yeah, and they could run the quarterback when needed. So they had situational ability. Miami was the best offense. Miami was first in points and yards per game.
FEI has Ohio State number 1.
Who's number 2?
Oregon.
Oregon was number 2. Okay, that makes sense.
Miami was 3rd. Because
Okay.
Blake, you got to remember, Miami was playing in the ACC, which is just not the same thing. So, but they were a really good offense, and they were pretty scary.
Is the argument maybe that you don't need the transcendent quarterback if you got enough weapons? Also, we talk about Will Howard like he's a total scrub. He's not a total scrub. Like, he's a pretty good quarterback.
It's always been true that you didn't need a transcendent quarterback. I mean,
yeah, that's always been your point. But just like, I think we got stuck in the spread era of like, I think Joe Burrow just like changed our minds.
Well, in Texas too, like Texas's best teams have been a little hero ball.
Yeah.
And like very transcendent quarterback dependent, which may be true again next year. So buckle up for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's other ways to skin a cat.
So yeah, your model is like what? The Stetson Bennett, JJ McCarthy, stable, makes the plays when they're there, but is not the entire offense type of quarterback.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ohio State, I mean, they had 3 NFL receivers maybe in their starting lineup. We'll see what Carnell Tate becomes.
He'll be an NFL receiver.
Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka are both surefire NFL guys. Probably will be drafted pretty high, both of them.
Carnell will be drafted. I don't know how high, but he will.
And then,
The back.
Howard is like the ideal. I spent all offseason like being like, hey, I think where Will Howard goes actually matters because he's pretty good and he's exactly what you want for a winning team.
Well, we just don't like him as Texas. We beat him not him 4 times specifically, but we beat Kansas State so much. We have this view of them as like that they choke and they're bad. And Will Howard's not a bad quarterback. And also is a fascinating case study in what team you're on matters as a quarterback. You can't win with Kansas State the whole thing, but you clearly can win it with Ohio State. It's the same guy.
Yeah. I got into a very similar debate recently with that over Brock Purdy.
What was give me your Brock Purdy take? Brock Purdy, if he was on X team in college, would have been a difference maker?
We were talking about Quinn Ewers' future in the NFL, and somebody made a comparison to Brock Purdy. And I said, just for the record, Brock Purdy was a better player in college than Quinn Ewers. Which I actually, we'll see what the chat says. I actually thought that was.
I'm not that mad at that take, man. I
thought that was kind of mild.
Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy take, man.
Well, it was treated as a crazy take.
And I don't think it is, man. I don't think that's crazy, man. Brock could move. Brock was more of a gamer. Like Brock did some real dumb stuff. Like he would make some, but he would also do some real cool stuff too. Which is interesting that when he went to the league, and all Matt Campbell did over the years of Brock were just take away his soul and make less dumb plays. Like I remember when I would break down Iowa State year after year, Brock went from this crazy gunslinger, like really high big time throw percentage, really high turnover worthy play percentage. And all Campbell did each year was bring down his turnover worthy play, but in turn, he also took down his big time throws. So you saw this kid that was wild and fun to watch turn into much more of a system quarterback. And that's why it made sense when the 49ers made him like the ultimate kind of system-y guy. But he wasn't born that way. He was much more young, wild, and free early on. But I don't think it's crazy. Like, I can see you arguing for Quinn or Brock, but to say like that's just like totally out of the realm of possibility, I don't think is true.
To me, it doesn't even really seem that close.
Yeah, but I'm saying I wouldn't be mad if you argued Quinn, but when people are like, that's an absurd idea, I don't agree with that. I think this is much more reasonable.
You can argue Quinn has a higher NFL upside, although I think that's maybe not going to age very well. Especially, Brock Purdy went to the Super Bowl. Like, that's what happens when he's finally on a good team. But
also when he's in like totally systematized. And everything is kind of built that way. Like Quinn's going to need that too, right? Quinn's like going to need the Rams or like one of those real offensive gurus to only play to his strengths type of thing.
Quinn Ewers makes the plays that flash. It's like we're looking at a great quarterback because he'll make throws that are like perfectly layered or perfectly placed every so often and like not infrequently, right? It's just like Quinn will make a throw and you're like,
damn. Yeah.
Right. But that's just not how it works. Like the running alone made Brock Purdy so valuable. And then you look at the passing and it's like Quinn needs to be a much better passer in comparison to make up for it. And it's not there. Like
Brock can also do the rollouts better because he's a better athlete than Quinn. But your Sundance theory too, that Quinn's better on the move. I think asking Quinn to just sit back and like tear people up in the pocket in the NFL is not going to be wise because he doesn't have good pocket mobility. So it's like, do you want him on that like outside zony Shanahanian system where he's rolling out backside and single read? Because that's your theory on him being a Sundance kid. I think that's
way easier under center if you're less quick than it is in the shotgun because your angles are different. But also the Sundance thing is not just like he's better on the move. It's also just that it's like the top of the drop when he like is making a quick motion, knowing where the ball is going to go. His mechanics are clean or whatever, or his arm is great. When he has to think and reset his feet, everything just goes to hell, right?
Yeah, he'll start doing this weird pitter pattering and all that kind of stuff, and then it becomes all arm.
Yeah. And he'll like try to adjust and calibrate with his arm at the last minute and just bad things happen.
Yeah. I don't think it's a crazy take. What did you say it on the board or whatever and got pushed back?
Yeah.
You've been having a hell of a run on the board, man. Yeah. You've been like a board arsonist the past, 2 months.
Yeah.
It's you just pop in with your take and then just light the whatever thread it is on fire. And then people will start tagging you in other threads that are unrelated, bringing you in there to start. You've been everywhere on the board the past couple of months.
People are also very attached to Shart choice, I've found.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have no strong opinion on Tashard choice. I just like somebody was like, if he goes, he could go to the Cowboys, and someone else was like, pay him every cent he asks for. And I was like, wait, why? Why? And then, but he has a reputation. Maybe I should read more of our recruiting articles or recruiting or something. But people see him as being like an integral part of the operation.
Yeah.
And I will plead some degree of ignorance, but part of me is just like, isn't NIL like the charismatic position coach that has been the darling of message boards for like 2 decades now? You know, how much do they really matter anymore?
Well, like running back coaches are also notorious for not being super impactful, but the difference is, and our recruiting guy said that Tashard is not just doing running back stuff.
He's a volume recruiter.
He's a volume recruiter. He's also been able to give us inroads into the deep South that we didn't have and allow us to make connections there. So he's had value beyond just, because I think your point's good where it's like, look,
has he really, or is it the
well, here's your argument.
Money that
right, but it's like if you're just saying if he was purely recruiting running backs, look, you're going to be able to buy a 5-star every year. That's not really your running back coach. But if because of that, he was able to make the connections that link up with the agents, link up with the high school coaches, and get you in for that Georgia defensive tackle that Texas generally doesn't get, that has its value too. I'd get if he was just recruiting running backs because let's be real, you can buy a 5-star every year at the position if I was a running back coach. But the difference is he's been able to scale and kind of make connections across the board and get you involved in other ways. So that's where I think the difference is. And of course, he's super likable, a lot of energy. He's just a likable guy. So the fans are going to gravitate there as well.
I mean, it might be true that he gets Texas in the door with Justice Terry or other Georgia kids that they wouldn't normally. But it just feels, it just seems, I just don't, I never take things like that at face value.
Yeah.
Is it really? Is it like if not for Tashard choice, Texas couldn't convince this Georgia kid to come play for Texas for whatever his NIL number is, but seems to be a large one.
Yeah, but I think too, right? If like all things are created equal, if the numbers are fairly similar across the board, Texas. Well, that's the argument. If they're not, then it's probably a mercenary thing. But if you get in those situations, and this could be counterfactual, but you get in those situations where 3 of the offers are similar, then it's going to come down to who you like and trust.
If it's true,
everyone can be replaced on the staff. I'm not with the fan thing of like, you can't lose anybody. Like everybody can be replaced, some harder than others. But I do think Choice has had value beyond his position room.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
I almost made a cop that would have just set the world on fire. So I'm gonna not do
which is your natural instinct. It's your brain's incredible how it works. It's like, how can I have the hottest take right now? The most defensible hottest take too, not just total nonsense.
Yeah. I just, he's clearly working very hard. I'd be curious to know more about like how that works with him getting Texas in with Georgia people. Like, is it like you have to understand that community? You have to know specific people, or else it's like, I guess it's possible that if you don't have trust within certain communities, like you haven't been given introductions and built trust, then you're just out and you're not even going to be allowed in. Like maybe if Texas comes in if they send me into Atlanta and I go around to different spots and I'm like, I can pay you $5 million to play defensive tackle for Texas. And I can blow every other offer out of the window. But if I don't have the trust with the right people, maybe it's like just doesn't even get heard.
Yeah.
Right. So it's possible that that's how it works. But it just seems I'm curious to hear more,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not saying that the money is not the probably the primary factor. But if the coaches can help on the second and third points, that might be where your leg up is. If all things are created equal there. If they're not created equal, then they're probably going with the money.
Yeah, maybe that you need you need choice and people like him. And I don't just mean black. I'm not trying to speak in code, but like people that are like established in different areas with different people.
Sure. Well, it's knowing the high school dude, knowing the high school coach and all of that stuff, Matt. This is insular. Like football guys are football guys. They want to know that you're from that world too. And he's a former pro player. Like there's a bunch of things that lend him automatic credibility that help too in those negotiations. Like he knows what it takes to get to the league. He's not just saying what he thinks it takes, you know. He does a bunch.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that you need that though, just even to get into the bidding room. So
yeah. But yeah, our recruiting guy says that he's done good stuff. Choices from Georgia, coach to Georgia Tech, and has roads in Florida as well. Yep.
Yeah, I don't doubt that he has all these connections. But the first thing that I think of though with Tashard Choice is I think about the running back room in 2024, which isn't all his fault. And then a prospective running back room in 2025, which I think makes both of us nervous. And I'm like, they have like 6 or 7 guys, and I don't know if any of them are elite. So then when someone's like, he's indispensable, but then it's like this first priority of him just fielding an awesome running back at Texas is not, that's not happening right now. So,
well, I'll say that like right now I don't like, this also could be just because I've seen Bijan and I'm like comparing everything to Bijan and Ricky Williams and like our just incredible history of backs. But he kind of likes these like bigger, slower backs. And which I think in the pros is more helpful. But I personally don't like that style of back in college.
I love that style, but then none of them are on the field.
Yeah, but I don't like that style.
Oh,
my favorite back is Christian Clark because he looks like Bijan, like he's an alpine skier. He's cutting through things and moving them smooth.
He's big. He is big though.
Christian Clark's not very big.
Yeah, he's like 5'10", 215 or something.
Is he?
I'm pretty sure.
Let me see. Let's see where he's at now. If he's at 215, I'll be ecstatic.
He blew his.
Oh, he's not bad. They're listing him at 210. So he's probably 205. And they say he's 6 foot. So you're right. He's probably 5'11", 5'10". It's bigger than I thought.
Yeah, he does have real agility though, which is why me and you both are big fans of his.
Yeah. Like Baxter, slower back, slower footed back, powery back. Gibson, same thing, more powery back. It's just not my favorite kind of style. So it's that thing. But also if they're injured and not on the field, how much of that is choice?
Yeah. They're very fair. But I look at 2025 and I'm like, how much better is it going to get? That's one of my concerns for next year. What is your ideal back then? What do you want?
I like Christian Clark's style.
Which is
like, I like the outside zone, single cut, get up type of back.
That's your big back though.
It's not necessarily. I don't want a 180-pound back. I'm not saying a scat back, but I like
the best. I don't like
when they look like Gore.
Some of the best outside zone backs in history, the one cut guys, are like ran a slow 40 and are just big with quick feet.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know how much of this is entirely influenced by Bijan Robinson. And I'm just like, if they can do Bijan Robinson, then I like them. And then Christian Clark reminds me of Bijan. So that's probably why I have that.
Bijan is a freak for sure.
Yeah, and you can't recreate that. So it's like it's also a very unfair way to evaluate all other running backs. But I definitely have a clear bias there.
He might be the best running back I've ever seen in Texas.
Yeah.
I mean,
but also I didn't watch the greats live. Like Bijan was the one that's like truly in my memory. Everything else was like a child or before I was born.
I watched Ricky on TV, and I watched Charles on TV and live. So
Yeah,
those
but
are
I was a kid when those happened. My first real conscious memories are right around Vince.
Oh yeah, Benson.
Yeah.
Benson was
That's
pretty.
about like when I come online, opposed to like having to watch old games. Eliminate the Clark and Baxter injuries and tell me we don't win the Natty.
I doubt it. Like those guys are not. I don't think the problem on first and goal was that Gibson wasn't big and strong enough. You know, like they had trouble blocking. So I would say no. The bigger problem was actually the tight end quarterback skill set dynamic. It would have helped to have a big power back, and they should get one in the future. But I think they're not quite that close to the Natty.
Yeah. And my thing too is like Baxter would have still likely been behind Blue, Wisner, and Baxter. So we rarely probably would have ever seen Clark. Now if Baxter goes down and Clark is still relevant, maybe you see him. And Clark's my favorite option. But so Clark's likely not in the rotation because he'd be like a 4-string back. And like I said, Baxter's yard per carry, breakaway percentage, and yards every contact per attempt in year one was all below average. So it's not like we had some high production back that went down. So I think it was mostly the problem. The backs aren't guaranteed to be as good as we're acting like, and then also the run blocking was sketchy. Did I do an ad read for Lux?
Nope. Fire away.
I should go ahead and do that. Here's Luxe Kitchen and Bath, guys.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
I think that's selling Baxter short. Maybe. My point is not to say that Baxter cannot improve. My point is just statistically, emotion taken out of it, he wasn't a top performing back. So we're suggesting that he would improve. He likely would. But we don't know that. That's my only argument, because we're having a lot of certainty. Like if Baxter was here, we win it all, right? And that sentiment's not just from retired working man. I've heard that all year from the fan base, and we just can't be that confident about that. It's not like we had Bajan numbers go down and we're just waiting for him to get healthy. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that was agonizing for him because I think he felt like he was going to go show something, and then he couldn't.
Now, to be fair to Baxter, a really good game versus Washington. Take away the fumble, but Baxter was starting to figure it out at the end of last year. Because remember at the beginning of last year, you just had to like sneeze on him and he would just go down, and it made no sense for a back of that size. He was starting to figure out his body. He was starting to figure out he was a man gap scheme runner in Florida. So his guy would pull, the hole would be open, and Baxter would run. There wasn't a ton of thinking. Then he had to figure out zone running, which is a different can of worms where you're reading multiple keys and all that, and it'll slow down a young back. He started to figure it out at the end of the year. He started to look faster. He started to fight through contact more. So Baxter was absolutely on an upward trajectory by the end of the year too, to be fair in that regard.
Yeah. Oh, I hope he's able to get back to whatever he would have been or more. Seems like a great kid.
Yeah, when he wrote the article, I've heard nothing but positive stuff about him behind the scenes. So we like Baxter. There's no question there. All right. Impressions from first team 12 team CFP. And how'd you feel about it? I gotta be honest, man. I was 1000% pro 12 team. And even I got fatigued by the end of the season. I think one less round would offer value. I think one less round would offer value, and I think auto bids are silly. So if you win your conference championship, you will still get in the playoffs. But if you're like ranked 16th and you win your conference, you're 12th. You don't get to be third. Like that stuff is insane. So it's like you would still make the playoffs, but you don't get buys like that. Because all you do is create a weaker next round, because you're going to have a couple of those teams that are the real deal and a couple of those teams that are not, and then you make that round boring as well.
The length is an interesting question. There's two things there. One is that college football is taking new ground and trying to carve out space in in January that it never used to, like mid to late January, that it never used to fight for, right? So it's like that's actually, other leagues are not doing that right now because they don't want to go up against the NFL. College football is actually trying to do it, which I think is maybe laudable.
Well, the funniest part is we're basically having to ask the NFL, like, pretty please let us have these spots. Because in the NFL is like, yeah, we're going to be nice to you, but also we're not going to turn down millions of dollars on that set. You know, it's kind of naive to be like, please, Mr. NFL.
Well, they're doing these Thursday, Friday, Monday times too that help with that.
Yep.
Obviously, so that they can kind of compete with the NFL, but not directly.
Yeah.
I wrote an article on my Substack this morning, americaswargame.substack.com.
Check it out.
Because people are complaining that the ratings have plummeted and that they screwed it all up. So I pulled it up, and I pulled up like the ratings for the quarterfinal and the semifinal games compared to the bowl games and the playoff games that would take place at those times under the old models.
Okay.
And one of my arguments has always been, one of the reasons that you expand the playoff is that people love watching bowl games over the holidays, and the sport was completely devaluing and destroying the bowl games when that was one of their better television products. So you needed to reclaim that time and actually present something compelling. And so with an expanded playoff, you're like tricking all these people into watching the bowl game again.
Right,
like,
which it is the bowl game, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Clemson 1 and done, right?
Yeah.
Arizona State 2 and done, nice.
Yeah.
And you're tricking the players into actually playing rather than shutting it down.
Yep.
Okay, so those are huge wins for the sport. And in the ratings, the semifinals were pretty comparable to the past. And the final, we actually haven't even seen the final yet, but they're a little bit down, right? So you lost a little steam in your semifinal, and you lost a little steam maybe in your final game. But in those December games, they're demolishing what the equivalent bowl games you were doing in 22 and 23.
Well, you end up if you look at all the views in total, right, you would still end up with more views. Like you might lose eyes on a particular game, but because the first, second, whatever rounds brought eyes, do you end up overall with more viewership?
Way more.
Okay. That was my point too, because everyone's like, this X game is down. It's like, it doesn't matter as long as more people watch the playoffs in totality.
I made a table. If y'all go to my Twitter account, you have to pay to read the article, but the table is the image for the tweet, so you can see it, and you can compare the numbers. Obviously, if Alabama had been involved, the numbers would have been a little better than SMU. Like that game was not great for the ratings or for competitiveness. So, but the other problem with the expansion, I feel like extending into January and taking on the NFL is ambitious in a good way. I think that's cool. It does feel a little bit long. Like this is our job and it's a grind, but I think we would get used to it.
Yeah, our tough job. It's like, oh man, I have to watch some more football. I have to think about more football.
I used to like pivot to NFL playoffs on the Substack, and now I like haven't even touched it because the season. But the injuries and the wear and tear on the players is definitely something to think about. Like Texas has guys like that are just like
Yeah.
So beat up, like multiple injuries, like multiple grade 1, grade 2 strains and
I think
tears.
it was Eric on Monday that told me that a player had 4 separate injuries or something like that, which
Yeah.
is like crazy, man. It's like, because what is that? Like, it's like both shoulders, both knee. Like, how do you even get 4 separate non-connected injuries? Like, that's pretty crazy.
It was a player that plays a position that's not quarterback.
Yeah.
So like if quarterback had 1 or 2 of those injuries, you would notice it or hear about it more.
Yeah.
But because it was like a defensive player, then it was like it's less noticeable.
Yeah.
So
would you take away a game from the playoffs? Probably no, because of what you're saying in the business model. But do you take away a game from the non-con? Like, how would you shorten the season? Or would you just not? Would you literally just shorten the season mean shorten games, or does that mean literally compact the window in which games are played? So instead of getting 10 days off between rounds, you get 7. It seems like that would just increase injuries because you would have less time to heal,
Yeah. Plus, I think that the extra time off helps them with navigating the NFL prime time and avoiding that. I mean, one obvious thing you could do is nix the non-conference and create a super league and kick out all these little schools and just put them on the different competitive level.
How brutal are you in this regard? I'll hear like taking away non-con hurts the little schools, which it would, because they're not getting, paid $1 million to basically take a dive.
Yep.
But also, if you just go like free market guy, you're like, if you can't survive on your own, why are we doing it? Maybe Directional State just doesn't have a football program, and then, but also the flip side is we're giving scholarships to 85 kids. That matters too in the long run. So it's just like, there's a cold part of me that's like, if you can't support your football program, then you just don't have a football program. The idea that everyone needs to have one is kind of silly. But also on the flip side, I like giving 85 kids scholarships. And man, if you're at a small school, man, it's still fun to go to your local football game, too. So for the student experience, I like it. But kind of how do you feel both ways there?
There's a lot to untangle there. That's the reason that all those programs have football teams. So like this huge undercurrent in that is that it's never been easier for people to access information and education, right? But then it begs the question of why should I go pay money to an expensive manicured lawn in expensive buildings to get this education, right? And it's like, well, if you come to our school and live on our campus,
you get this experience.
You get this experience. You get to have fun. You're around a bunch of 18 to 20-year-old people you can party with and do other things with. And you get to go to the football games and like have this community deal. Yeah. And so that's like the sell. And without that, without either the come have a really fun experience, or if you go to a better school, it's more exclusive, then it's like, hey, develop peers and network with people that are extremely gifted, talented, privileged in some way that can then help you later in life. Like I met my wife at the University of Texas, and that marrying her has been an enormous boon to my prospects. Enormous boon.
Yeah.
And I only met her because I went to school and,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, with these smaller schools, it becomes more and more of a question mark. So that's why they spend money on these football programs. And
but also these are good commercials too, right? Like it's hard to, like for these small schools, man, you get to go play Texas. UTSA is now getting 3 million eyes during that game. They end up being, that they wouldn't have gotten.
Yeah.
So it's like there's also that value too. That these football games are huge commercials for these universities. And if you notice, they always run corny commercials in tandem where they're like, it's some OU like scientist holding a beaker, like, we have scholars here. Like, so schools take big advantage of that. And especially if you're a small school, there's no other reason you're going to get on national TV.
Use them now for talent development too.
Yeah.
Like I one of my maybe I'll write this Inside Texas for a Fight Me Friday. I think talented 5-star quarterbacks should go to small schools and start immediately and then transfer to big schools.
Like the reverse Malachi.
Yeah, the
Nelson.
reverse Malachi Nelson. Go somewhere and play. Those reps are invaluable, and you're going to develop so much more. But it's like the marshmallow test. Like who's going to go make a piddling money in NIL when your value is hot out of high school in exchange for the development that could actually make you a better player?
But also your value, you've seen it too, how much it wanes, like a year difference. Like if you're like the 5-star player that goes and sits the bench somewhere and then tries to go back in the portal, we've seen that with a couple of our guys. Your name's not as hot anymore. So like we forget you quick too. So if you're like a special quarterback and then you go toil at whatever state and then you're like, I'm back in the portal, let's do it, guys. You might not get anywhere near the exposure that you had just a year ago.
Yep. But you're like the guys for whom it worked. Like, how much did Will Howard make when he transferred to Ohio State? How much did
okay, you're talking small schools like Kansas State or like Washington. I thought you're talking like legit, like go to a G5 and get to work type of.
No, I am. Like, okay. I just haven't got to an example that quite met that yet. Like Cam Ward was like that. Cam Ward went to like a Texas FCS school or something first.
Yeah, and then Washington State.
And then Washington State. Ben Roethlisberger played his whole career at like what? I can't remember where.
I don't know. I wasn't watching old.
Toledo or
I only remember him at the Steelers. Incarnate Word. Was Incarnate Word Cam?
I think Incarnate Word was Cam. Yeah. So I there's a lot of guys that have been like that. Aaron Rodgers went JUCO and then Cal. Brett Favre played at Southern Mississippi.
Terry Bradshaw was Louisiana Tech, right? But he didn't scale.
I think so.
I think he graduated from Louisiana Tech.
Josh Allen was a JUCO kid and then a Wyoming guy. So these guys, I think actually playing games is much more valuable. And meanwhile, if you're a national championship kind of team, why in the world is anyone still spending like $4 million on a freshman 5-star? When the champions are like, we're going to plug in Will Howard and he's going to be
right. They've turned the model kind of upside down. They're like, you actually just wait you just wait to who rises and then you poach whoever rises, opposed to like the risk of true development.
Yeah, Riley Leonard, Duke to Notre Dame.
I think Mateer with to OU will be a good, but it's that kind of thing where it's like, why would I take the risk on this high school kid when I can just wait 3 years, come in with my NIL, loan him for a year when I have all the other pieces already there? Yeah, what's the value of like true development at that position now if you're seeing that you can just kind of grab a guy at the last second?
This is arguably true for all the skill positions. Like the big man positions, you got to recruit them because they're not going to be available. They're not going to.
Yeah, 5-star edges are elite edges. Don't pop in the portal and stuff like. Yeah, your trench guys, you have to.
But like for quarterback, receiver, I'm like even corner, definitely safety. It's like, wouldn't you rather have the guy that like proved it at another school and emerged? So.
I agree. Yeah, that's my model.
So, but then what do we do? The small schools are invaluable in that regard. So you don't really want them to stop playing football.
Yeah.
So.
Dang, Ian, we didn't solve college football. We were so close, dude.
So close.
We were so close. Fans, thank you guys for hanging out. Always enjoy it. Today was more of a abstract conversation, but I actually enjoyed it. We don't generally go that deep into the structure of the sport. So thanks for watching, guys. Ian, thank you, and hook 'em, y'all.